Hey guys, what's happening? It's Dean from Electronisounds. Stick around. Today we're going to talk about timing inside of AUM and how I'm staying on the grid during my live jams. Stick around, check it out.
Electronisounds Audio, the YouTube channel for you.
So, most electronic music is based around loops and phrases that will change every 8 bars or every 16 bars, sometimes every 32 bars. And that can get a little bit, difficult to keep track of depending on how much stuff you've got going on when you're live jamming. If you've got quite a few tracks happening here inside of AUM, and maybe you're controlling some external gear as well, it can sometimes be a little bit difficult to stay on the grid and kind of be in time, with your jam and keep your brain aligned with when the changes are coming in your jam. I find this particularly difficult when I'm doing jams with like lots of different pieces of hardware and involved. And what I've come up with as a way to sort of keep my brain visually aligned with where we're at in the grid during the live jams is I've created myself a downfilter sample that I've loaded inside of AUM. And what a downfilter is it's basically like a crash cymbal. Let me play for you guys what this sounds like so you know what I'm talking about. So it's basically a crash cymbal. We're basically using this in place of a crash cymbal. In fact, you could actually use a crash cymbal to replace the downfilter sound here. The key is that it's rendered out mathematically to exactly 16 bars. And what we do is when we load this sample inside of AUM, we're going to tell it to loop and we're going to tell it to sync. And that way, no matter what the tempo of the jam is, AUM is going to stretch this downfilter sample, and this is always going to be a visual representation of 16 bars. And how this works is when I press play, there's going to be a little line that starts moving here. So when the line gets to the 3 o'clock position, I'll know 4 bars have passed. And when the line gets to the 6 o'clock position and crosses this line again, I'll know that 8 bars have passed. And I'll know that when the line gets all the way back to the beginning again, that full 16 bars have passed and that this is going to hit again on the downbeat of the next bar. Let me show you what this sounds like. This is just a basic groove that I've got going here. So 4 bars have passed. You can see this is moving here, that little line. 7, 2, 3, 4. Actually, it would have been 8, 2, 3, 4. But nonetheless, as the line travels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. Here we go. And we do that again. And the whole time that the jam is playing, this is providing, an impact on the downbeat of every 16 bar sequence. Which, if I get lost, or say if I'm, playing something that's not, in the app of AUM, maybe I'm focusing on, playing a drum solo on the drum pad, or maybe I'm playing a synthesizer part, or maybe I'm tweaking the filter on something, and I'm, all of a sudden I'm lost, and I've lost the momentum or the feeling of where we're at in the 8 bars, but I still want to be aligned to the grid. I can just take a peek at wherever this meter is, and I can instantly know where I'm at on the grid and when the next change will be coming at the beginning of the next 8 bar or 16 bar section. This also helps, in my opinion, to keep the forward momentum of your track going. And you might hear me talk about like tension and release and that sort of stuff and forward momentum in my other videos as well. And I just think that by, putting that downbeat every 16, kind of that, that crash effect, that it really does help drive the forward momentum of your track forward. And it really helps differentiate that, hey, we're going into a new section of the track and you should focus on this now for the listener's ear, to help get everybody focused that we're changing and that we're doing something new. Let me go ahead and show you how we can make our own downfilter from scratch, guys. Okay, let's design ourselves a custom down filter. There's a million ways you could go about this. You may have a sample pack that already contains some crashes and some impact effects and whatnot, and you could literally just drag and drop a sample onto the pad here, and then render that out at 16 bars. And I'm going to show you how to do that. And it's really the most important thing is that we're rendering out to 16 bars. I suppose you could also render out to 32 bars if you didn't want your impact crash sound to repeat as often in your mix when you're live jamming inside of AUM. Although you could easily just turn the channel down inside of AUM as well if you want it to not play for a while, but still have that visual representation on the screen. I found a good way to get started with the down filter is with the Model D plugin from Moog, and what we'll do is we'll go ahead and load that inside of Beatmaker 3 here. Now basically we're just going to be messing with some white noise and shaping that and filtering that just a little bit. So any synthesizer that has some white noise inside it can get you started here. There's a preset in the effects tab. It's literally just called Noise Blast, and that's a great place to start here for us. We're going to go ahead and turn the volume down just a bit to start with. And it sounds like this by default. So it's, pretty good sound by default. But what we're going to do is turn the oscillators down in volume and turn that noise volume up just a little bit. And then we'll, let's say, bring the sustain down over here. And let's see what that sounds like. It's a little better, closer to what we're looking for. Let's go ahead and go to the effects section and turn the delay off, because we'll use some delay inside of AUM on this, and that way it'll sync to our tempo. Let's see here. It's pretty good. You might just want to tweak this a little bit, to your liking. That's pretty good right there. And what we'll do is when we're ready, we'll go ahead and just hit start over here, and we'll hit one. Okay, hit that again. Maybe we'll do a couple, so I'll change to the next pad, and we'll record on that pad as well. But I'll maybe make some adjustments here. That's cool. Maybe we'll do some higher octave ones. We'll go way up high. Maybe we'll make this decay time longer. Maybe we'll start on a new pad. We'll go to pad 3, hit start. That's a pretty good one right there for our purposes. And what we can do is hit stop there, X this out, go to the sampler, make sure that our recordings, are here, and they are. So now we can go back to the plugin page and click these 3 dots. And whoops, did I already unload the plugin? Oh, there it is, in fact. So we'll unload that plugin. Okay, good deal. And now what we have is we just have these raw samples that we can work with inside of Beatmaker 3. So if we go over to take the keys mode off. Maybe we want to put an effect on this track, and maybe we want to take the built-in EQ, and maybe we'll take this to a high pass. We'll cut off maybe some of the low frequencies that might be hanging around here, because we certainly don't need that. Say if we're going to put this over a mix, we don't want there to be any extraneous low frequencies that might mess with our kick drum or our bass frequencies. Sometimes I'll go up as high as, even 1,000, hertz on something like this. That sounds pretty good, actually. And what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and add some reverb onto this sample. And we'll use audio units v3. I'm a big fan of the EOS 2 reverb from Audio Damage these days. And what we want is like a really big reverb. So let's see, their first one, I believe, is a pretty big reverb. Let's see what that sounds like right off the jump. If we just, yeah, that's pretty close to what we're looking for right there. So what let's do is if I open up the page here where we can go back to our sampler window, maybe we'll bring actually, instead of bringing the gain up on this, put that back to 0. Maybe what we can do is go inside the edit window here. go to process, go to normalize, but we don't need it to be, huge and full volume, but definitely louder than it is now. So I'd say if we, normalize to about -5, you'll see what happens here. It still made that, quite a lot louder. Okay. You can hear that it's really being affected by the reverb there, which is what we want. And basically, I'll do the same thing here, is I'll cut out any low frequencies that might be coming through in this reverb. Just, probably not much coming through because we already shaved off on the outside, but always good just to, keep those low frequency content out of anything that doesn't need to have it. Okay, so what we can do here is we can go ahead and create ourselves a pattern, and we can drag this out, do a full 16 bar pattern, right? And then I can just, put in a downbeat to play this sample. We can even do a little bit of a select and a fade out there, so just make sure it's nice and clean. And now, all right. And what happens here is that, in song mode, we've created ourselves a 16 bar loop, right? So now if I export that, we know that it's going to export 16 bars exactly. And what we can do is, it's going to be 16 bars at whatever the tempo you have it set at. And what I did is, I like to make jams that are as high tempo as, say, 174 BPM for like drum and bass, but I also like to make, chill out stuff that might be 92 beats per minute at the complete opposite end of the spectrum. You might want to do this at a few different tempos and maybe make a render at, say, towards the higher spectrum of the jams you like to do, and maybe one towards the lower spectrum. But for this, practical purposes for today, we're going to go ahead and set this tempo to a common tempo for me, which is 128. And that way, if I want to go higher, it's going to stretch a little bit. If I want to go lower, it's going to stretch a little bit. But if I render this at, the full high tempo, then it really has to stretch a lot to go to the low tempo. Or if I render it at the low tempo, then it really will have a lot to go if I want to stretch it to a high tempo. So somewhere in the middle is always, kind of a good place to be as well. We're going to go ahead and try to export this now. We'll just make sure that our level over here is fine and not clipping. Yeah, no worries at all there. And we'll go to the little 3 dots there. We're going to click export. We're going to click song. And we're going to take this duration up to... Whoop. I think I need to put the loop point on inside the window here. In fact, we do. It wasn't on. So I'll bring that brace out. Okay, so now the brace is all the way at the top there to the full 17. We're going to go to export. If I click song, loop, there we go, loop, it's going to, export that full 16 bars. Now we don't want to normalize this because, again, it's going to make our volume a little bit, outrageous. We'll go ahead and start that export here. And it's going to go ahead and put that into our new session, blah, blah, blah directory, right? So we're going to go to our sample folder. And if we go to sessions, right, and see if I can find the sample. There we go. In the exports folder, new session, and then the one at the end. And there's our, there's our sample. And what we can do, is we can click the edit button. We can highlight that sample, we can click rename, and we can give this a proper name like Downfilter 128 BPM. Now, while you got this loaded up, it would be really easy to go ahead and, change that tempo and do the exact same thing and render this out at a few different tempos so that when you're using it in jams at different tempos, it doesn't have as far to stretch. But for this practical, purposes for the demo and all, we're just going to do one render today at just that one tempo. Now that we have our sample rendered, you're going to want to be able to use this inside of AUM. So let's go ahead and click edit. And we'll select the sample. We'll choose share. We're going to choose save to files. Here we're going to choose our audio share files. And you can store this anywhere inside of, audio share files where you're keeping your samples. Now that we've got that inside of audio share, I'm going to go ahead and close Beatmaker 3 and we're going to open AUM again. I'm going to show you how to load that sample into your session. What I like to do is embed that into like a blank template in AUM so that every time I open an AUM session, my downfilter is already there and ready to go and ready to stretch to tempo. Here's how we're going to load that in. We're going to press, the plus key here, and we'll press at the addition button up here. Now we're going to choose the file player, and we're going to tap to load. Now it says tap to load a file, so we're going to do that, and it's going to default put you right into your audio share files. So wherever you've got your stuff stored in here is where you're going to want to navigate to find that file. And here it is, Downfilter, 128 BPM, okay? And now all you have to do is press loop and sync. And now every time I press play, it's going to play that downfilter. And you can see that it's starting the looping process. So as soon as it hits that line at the bottom, I know that 8 bars have gone by. And now we just started the downbeat of measure 9. And so that, the groove would be going da 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 da, and I'm, tweaking a filter on another synth or something. I take a look and I know it's coming back around and 1. And there's that downbeat again. So to make that downfilter, guys, you could use any combination of white noise. A lot of times I like to layer a clap sound over the top of that, which is also being run through a lot of reverb, so you get more of a like a transient sound, more of a punch when it hits that downbeat. But this is all about experimentation and making, your own sounds, or maybe you're not into sound design and it's about, just grabbing a sample from a pack that you like and rendering that out at exactly 16 bars. Again, or it could be 32 bars. But this way, you'll have a visual representation in AUM as you watch this meter go around, and you know when those downbeats are coming. You know when it's time for the next 8-bar section, and you know when it's time for the next 16-bar section. So no matter what you're doing off screen, you just kind of take a look back over here and you see where this, visual representation is of your meter, and right off the jump, when I hit that line, it's going to be the downbeat of measure 9. Boom, right? And dun 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 dun, groove's going, bass line's going, chords are going, maybe some vocals are going, and here we go, and the momentum, and we're gonna line up with the grid. 3, 2, 1, go! So it's a really easy visual representation to just really help me keep aligned with the changes and help me stay on the grid. I hope you guys have found this useful, and until next time, thanks for watching. I'm also going to put up a pack of free downfilters for all my patrons, so if you're not into sound design but you still want to be able to use a whole bunch of cool downfilters inside of your AUM sessions, maybe consider supporting me on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. I really appreciate the support, guys. It takes a lot of time and effort to make all of these videos.